I always believed that when two people made a promise in front of family, friends, and the universe itself, it meant something. You stick together. You fight through the storms. You hold each other up when the world tries to tear you apart. That's what marriage was to me. At least that's what I thought it was for her, too. Her name was Emily. We met in college. Classic story. Late night studying turned into early mornings talking about dreams, careers, kids, and forever. When I proposed to her under the giant oak tree where we had our first date, she cried so hard she couldn't even say the word yes. She just nodded through the tears. I thought those were tears of joy. Maybe deep down they were tears of doubt. Fast forward 12 years. We had built a life together. Good jobs, a comfortable home, vacations to places we once only dreamed of visiting. To the outside world, we were the definition of a happy couple. The truth? I started noticing small cracks a year before it all fell apart. She became distant. Little things. Staying late at work, checking her phone the moment a notification popped up, smiling at texts she wouldn't share with me. I tried to tell myself it was stress. After all, we were both working long hours. I didn't want to be that paranoid husband. I didn't want to be that guy. But your gut knows when something is wrong, even if your heart begs you to ignore it. Then one evening, she dropped the bomb. We were sitting at the kitchen table eating takeout when she set her fork down, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I think I need a break." A break? As if marriage was some job you could clock out of for a few weeks. As if commitment was something you could hit the pause button on whenever it got too heavy. I felt like someone had sucker punched me. I asked her why, and she mumbled something about finding herself and needing space. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Instead, I sat there nodding slowly as my heart shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces. And in that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I would give her the space she so desperately wanted, but not in the way she expected. I started observing instead of questioning, watching instead of confronting. What I discovered over the next few weeks would destroy every illusion I had about the woman I thought I knew and set into motion a chain of events that would leave her stunned, broken, and very, very alone. She said she needed a break. I was about to show her what a break really looked like. The first few days after Emily announced she needed a break, she behaved like nothing had changed. She still smiled when she left for work. She still kissed me on the cheek absent-mindedly, like a routine she hadn't thought about in years. But her eyes never met mine the same way. They darted away, guilty and unsure. I didn't confront her. I didn't snoop through her phone like some desperate fool. Instead, I quietly started gathering the pieces. You don't live with someone for over a decade without learning their patterns, their tells. She thought she was being discreet, but in reality, she was an open book to me now. It started with her gym routine. Emily never liked working out before. Suddenly, she was hitting the gym 5 times a week. And each time, she came back showered, perfumed, and oddly radiant. Not the tired glow of someone who just burned 500 calories. No, this was the shine of someone who had been touched, admired, worshipped. Then came the secretive texts, the ones she thought I didn't notice as she tilted her phone away while typing furiously, smiling at the screen like a teenager with a crush. She even laughed at times. That sweet, giddy laugh she hadn't used around me in years. But the final confirmation came on a Wednesday evening. Emily said she was going out for a self-care night. A massage, dinner with herself, maybe a bookstore run. I played it cool, wished her a relaxing evening, and waited exactly 30 minutes after she left. Then I drove. I didn't follow her directly. I wasn't that reckless. I used the shared location feature we had set up years ago for emergencies. She had forgotten it even existed. Funny how people remember technology when it serves them and forget it when it betrays them. I found her car parked outside a cozy, dimly lit restaurant on the other side of town. And there she was through the window, not alone, not lost in deep thought about her life. No, Emily was sitting across from a man I had never seen before, leaning in close, her hand grazing his as she laughed that high, breathless laugh she once reserved for me. She wasn't finding herself. She was losing herself with someone else. I didn't storm inside. I didn't make a scene. I sat in my car watching, memorizing every detail. The way she played with her hair, the way she tilted her head when he spoke, the way she bit her lip when he smiled at her. All the little signs of attraction she hadn't shown me in years. By the time she came home hours later, smelling of a different cologne than mine, I was already planning my next move. No yelling, no fighting, no begging, just a plan. A plan that would leave her absolutely gutted. And when it was done, she would understand the true meaning of taking a break. After that night, I no longer viewed Emily as my wife. She was just a stranger occupying space in my life, smiling fake smiles and lying with every breath. The woman I loved had died somewhere along the way. And this version, this shell, was what remained. And I had no intention of clinging to it any longer. The next morning, while she was busy pretending everything was normal, I started preparing my exit. Not a dramatic departure, not a shouting match, something much colder, cleaner. The kind of ending that leaves no doubt. I contacted a divorce lawyer, a good one, the kind who didn't just win cases, he dismantled them piece by piece. I explained the situation, keeping my voice level, my emotions bottled up tight. He listened, nodded, and said, "We'll make sure you walk away with everything you deserve." I opened a new bank account that day, quietly transferred half of our joint savings into it, the half that was legally mine. I gathered copies of important documents, the mortgage, the car titles, our insurance policies. I backed up years of shared photos, documents, and memories onto a private drive only I could access. I made sure there would be no messy financial surprises when the dust settled. At home, I became a ghost. I didn't pick fights. I didn't show anger. I was polite, even cheerful at times, nodding along when she shared little stories about her day, pretending not to notice when she got ready for solo nights out in outfits she hadn't worn in years. She mistook my calm for weakness. She thought I was too stunned, too heartbroken to act. In truth, I was building the bomb that would tear her little fantasy apart. One evening, as we sat on the couch pretending to watch a movie, Emily glanced at me with that fake sad smile and said, "I just need some time to figure things out." I turned to her, smiled back warmly, and said, "Take all the time you need." Inside, I was already counting down the days. She thought she was in control. She thought she was orchestrating some grand new chapter of her life. What she didn't know was that I had already decided when the final page would turn, and when it did, it would be a page she would never be able to rewrite. The day I decided it was time to move, I played it just like every other day. I woke up early, made coffee, packed for work, and kissed Emily on the forehead as she pretended to still be asleep. I drove to my office, but I didn't stay there long. Instead, I met with my lawyer to finalize the paperwork, divorce documents, financial separation agreements, and a formal request for the house and the car to remain under my ownership. I wasn't out for blood. I was simply protecting what I had built while she had been out finding herself in another man's arms. That evening, Emily had plans again. She told me with that same rehearsed sadness that she needed to clear her mind. I nodded like the loyal fool she believed I still was and offered to order her a cab. She smiled sweetly, patted my hand like I was some sad puppy, and declined, saying she had it covered. I watched her leave in a black dress that hugged her figure a little too tightly for a woman supposedly battling a deep existential crisis. I waited exactly 10 minutes after the door clicked shut. Then I got up and moved quickly, grabbing the hidden folder I had kept ready for weeks. Copies of her text messages, the restaurant receipt she had carelessly left in the trash, the hotel reservation email she had foolishly opened on our shared laptop. I had it all neatly compiled. Proof that she hadn't been lost or confused. She had been cheating. Full stop. But I wasn't done yet. While she was off with her lover, I had one last thing to do. Pack. Not my things, hers. I moved through the house with mechanical precision, boxing up her clothes, her makeup, her jewelry, every photo of us together, every trinket she had gifted me over the years, all packed neatly into boxes and stacked by the door. I even printed a detailed inventory list and placed it on top of the largest box, like a cruel little reminder of how organized and methodical I could be when properly motivated. By the time midnight rolled around, the house barely looked like she had ever lived there. And then I placed the final piece. The manila envelope containing the divorce papers, positioned carefully on the dining table where she would see it the moment she walked through the door. I wasn't finished, though. I took one last walk through the home we had once dreamed about together. The kitchen where we had planned dinners, the living room where we had imagined kids opening Christmas presents, the bedroom where we whispered promises under the covers. All of it destroyed by one selfish decision on her part. When I finally heard the sound of her key fumbling in the lock, I didn't rush to the door. I stayed seated in the armchair by the window, bathed in the soft light of the street lamp outside. Calm, ready. The door swung open, and there she was, flushed from the cold night air, cheeks rosy, hair slightly tousled from wherever she had been. She stepped inside, kicking off her heels, already launching into a lazy excuse about how exhausted she was. Then she saw the boxes, and then she saw the envelope. Her mouth opened slightly, confusion first, then dread, then a panic she couldn't quite disguise. She clutched the envelope with trembling hands, flipping it open. Her eyes scanned the divorce papers faster than she could process them. Her body stiffened, her face drained of color, and the lazy smile she had been wearing evaporated in an instant. I rose from the chair slowly, pocketing the house keys I had already had duplicated in my new name alone. Without a word, without a single tear, I walked past her, past the woman who once promised me forever and instead chose betrayal, and left her standing there, drowning in the ruins of everything she had taken for granted. She said she needed a break. Now she had one, a permanent one. I didn't look back when I stepped out into the cool night air. I didn't need to. I already knew what was unfolding behind me. The confusion, the realization, the desperation starting to bloom across her face as I walked to my car, parked neatly down the street. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out casually, unsurprised to see her name lighting up the screen. I watched it ring out, and when it rang again and again, I turned the phone off without a second thought. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt genuinely free. Not because I hated her. I didn't. Pitied her. I pitied the small, broken person she had become. Someone so desperate for validation that she was willing to burn her own life down for fleeting moments of attention. But I would not be the man left standing in the ashes. The next morning, the real fallout began. I woke up in my new apartment. Small, modest, but clean in mind, and checked my email. There it was. A flood of messages from Emily. Long paragraphs filled with confusion, anger, bargaining, and apologies. A desperate timeline of emotions as she realized that I hadn't just caught her. I had moved on without giving her a chance to beg for forgiveness. She wasn't used to not having control. She was used to me fighting for us, trying to fix things, trying to hold together what she had carelessly destroyed. She wasn't prepared for silence, for the absence of the man who had once moved heaven and earth to make her happy. By mid-afternoon, my lawyer called. Emily had already contacted legal counsel trying to fight the divorce, but it was too late. Everything had been handled in advance. Every detail carefully checked, every document airtight. There would be no screaming matches in courtrooms, no messy battles over assets. I had made sure of that. Meanwhile, the man she had sacrificed everything for, he wasn't exactly Prince Charming. I had learned through a few discreet inquiries that he was a serial flirt with 2 kids from previous relationships and a reputation for leaving women when things got complicated. He wasn't looking for a lifelong partner. He was looking for an escape, an adventure. And now, with Emily's life in ruins, he had already started pulling away. Mutual friends, the few who still talked to me, began feeding me small updates without even realizing it. Emily wasn't coping well. She cried at work. She missed deadlines. She stopped showing up to the gym altogether. The same vibrant glow she had when she was sneaking around had faded, leaving only hollow eyes and a brittle smile. Part of me expected to feel some twisted satisfaction, some dark pleasure in knowing she was suffering. But standing there reading their messages, all I felt was a deep, unshakable emptiness. The love I had for her, the real, fierce, stubborn love that had fueled 1,000 sacrifices. It was just gone, burned away. Nothing left but dust. That night, Alone in my new place, I made a choice. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let her mistake be the thing that colored the rest of my life with bitterness. I had escaped. I was free. It was time to start living like it. And as for Emily, she was finally standing in the rubble of her choices, holding nothing but regret, exactly where she had insisted she wanted to be. The calls started coming in waves after the initial shock wore off. At first, they were frantic, rapid-fire texts, long voicemails with that familiar tremble in her voice, the same tremble she used to have when she would say, "I love you," in the dark. Then came the guilt trips, messages filled with blame. "How could you just leave? We could have worked through this. You're giving up too easily." As if she hadn't already chosen to burn our life down long before I picked up the first match. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't even read most of the texts. They were noise, background static from a chapter 1 had already closed. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the version of myself she had tried to convince me didn't exist. The one who didn't need someone else's validation to feel whole. The one who wasn't begging for scraps of affection. Meanwhile, the cracks in her facade started to widen. Through a few mutual acquaintances and the not-so-subtle social media updates she clearly hoped I would see, it became obvious that things weren't working out with her new love. Pictures of fancy dinners were replaced with blurry shots of wine glasses at home. Her alone at her kitchen table. The confident captions about new beginnings turned into vague, sad quotes about heartbreak and lessons learned. It was almost too easy to piece together what had happened. Her new man had gotten exactly what he wanted. The thrill of the chase, the excitement of forbidden romance. And once the dust settled, once reality came crashing in, he had no interest in the wreckage he helped create. No interest in a woman who had burned her marriage, her reputation, and her own peace of mind for a fleeting fantasy. One night, just before midnight, I got a text that I actually opened. For words, no punctuation, no preamble. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time. I thought about the man I used to be, the man who would have driven across the city just to sit down and listen, to fix whatever was broken, to fight for a love that had long since stopped fighting for him. I thought about how many nights I had stayed awake trying to figure out what I had done wrong when the truth was simple. I hadn't failed her. She had failed herself. So I didn't answer. I didn't even delete the message. I left it there, a silent reminder that some bridges, once burned, are never rebuilt. A week later, she showed up at my new apartment. I knew she would eventually. I saw her through the peephole before she even knocked. Standing there in the hallway with her hands clutched nervously in front of her, her eyes red and puffy. She wasn't dressed for a confrontation. She was dressed like she was desperate, like she finally understood what she had lost. The knock came, soft and hesitant. I didn't answer. She knocked again, a little louder, and I could hear her whisper my name, broken and unsure. Still, I didn't move. I stood there just on the other side of the door, silent and unmoving until finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard her sob once, a low, broken sound, and then the shuffle of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I waited another hour before I opened the door and found the envelope she had left behind. Inside was a letter, handwritten, pages long. Apologies, regrets, confessions. She admitted to everything. The emotional affair, the physical betrayal, the selfishness, the way she had convinced herself that I was the problem when, deep down, she knew it had been her all along. She begged for forgiveness. She said she wanted to try again, that she was willing to do anything. It was honest, raw, full of the kind of vulnerability she should have given me years ago. And it didn't change a thing. Regret isn't always enough. Sometimes regret is just the echo of the life you destroyed when you thought you were too good for it. I placed the letter back in the envelope, set it gently on the table, and walked away without a second thought. Because the man she wrote that letter to, he didn't exist anymore. The days that followed her failed visit were eerily quiet. No more midnight texts, no missed calls, no desperate voicemails filling up my inbox. It was as if she had finally understood the message I had been sending without saying a word. There was no coming back. Some choices have consequences you don't get to run from. Some betrayals sever ties so deeply that no apology, no explanation, no tearful plea could ever stitch them back together. But silence has a way of stirring old ghosts. One evening about 2 weeks later, as I sat in my living room with the city lights flickering against the windows, I found myself thinking not about Emily, not about the betrayal, but about the man I had been when this all started. I thought about the naive faith I had in love, the stubborn belief that loyalty was always repaid with loyalty. I grieved for that man. He was gone now, and in his place stood someone sharper, wiser, but also colder. There's a cost to surviving betrayal, and part of it is realizing that you'll never love with the same reckless abandon again. Meanwhile, Emily's life continued unraveling. I heard from a mutual friend, someone who didn't realize I didn't care for updates, that she had tried reaching out to her new flame, tried to mend whatever fragile thing they had started, but it was too late. The man she had thrown everything away for was already entertaining someone new, younger, fresher, untainted by the heavy baggage Emily now carried. It was almost poetic in a tragic way. She had traded stability for excitement, traded loyalty for passion, and in the end, she was left with neither. The few friends who had cheered her on during her so-called self-discovery journey had started to vanish too. It's easy to support someone when they seem bold and empowered. Less so when the aftermath is messy, sad, and inconvenient. One by one, the people she thought would prop her up disappeared until it was just her and her regrets. And that's when the emails started. Long, sprawling essays about the life we could have had. About how she realized too late that happiness isn't found in late-night adventures with strangers, but in the quiet, steady presence of someone who chooses you every single day. About how she would have done anything to take it all back if she could. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because I understood something she never had. Forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciliation. I forgave her quietly for myself, for my own peace, but I would never invite her back into my life. Not as a wife, not as a friend, not even as a distant memory I clung to. Some lessons cost too much to learn twice. One Friday evening, I saw her for the first time in months. I was at a local cafe sipping coffee, reading a book, savoring the small, quiet joys of my new life. And then I felt it, that strange sensation of someone watching you. I looked up and there she was, standing just outside the window, half hidden behind a group of passing strangers. Her eyes were fixed on me with a look I can only describe as haunted. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She didn't move closer. She just stood there staring as if she was trying to memorize a life she could no longer touch. I didn't acknowledge her. I didn't need to. I simply returned to my book, turned the page, and left her there, a ghost trapped on the other side of the glass. She was the one who had needed a break. She was the one who had smiled as she walked away. And now she was the one left behind, staring at the ruins of a future she had so carelessly set ablaze. Walking away from Emily that day at the cafe, or rather refusing to acknowledge her, felt like closing the last open wound. It was a quiet ending, not the dramatic confrontation so many would expect. No grand speech, no explosive emotions, just a man who had finally chosen himself over the wreckage someone else left behind. In the months that followed, my life didn't magically transform overnight. Healing isn't some linear, glossy journey like they sell you in movies. It's messy. Some mornings I would wake up with a heavy heart, remembering flashes of what could have been. Some nights the silence would creep in, whispering doubts when the world went still. But those moments grew fewer and fewer, like echoes fading into the distance. And every time I chose not to respond, not to fall into old patterns of self-blame, I grew stronger. I focused on the simple joys first, rediscovering hobbies I had once shelved, reconnecting with friends I had drifted from, taking long drives with no destination in mind. I signed up for a cooking class on a whim and found that creating something new, something tangible, was incredibly healing. It reminded me that I was capable of building things, beautiful things, even after someone else had tried to tear me down. And somewhere along the way, happiness returned. Not the brittle, performative happiness of trying to fix someone or save something doomed. No, a quiet, steady happiness that asked nothing of me except to show up for myself fully and honestly. I eventually met someone new. Not by chasing, not by searching desperately, but simply by living fully. Her name was Claire. We met at a charity event I almost skipped, too tired from work to socialize. But there she was, bright, genuine, unpretentious. She didn't try to complete me or rescue me. She had her own dreams, her own battles, her own light. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to earn love by sacrificing myself. It just existed freely, naturally. Claire knew my story. I didn't hide it. I told her everything, not as a way to dwell in bitterness, but as a way to show her the man I had fought to become. She listened without judgment, without pity, only squeezing my hand once and saying, "I'm glad you didn't let it destroy you." And she was right. I didn't let it destroy me. That chapter of betrayal, heartbreak, and loss didn't define me. It refined me. It carved away the illusions I once clung to and revealed someone stronger, wiser, and far more alive. Sometimes life doesn't give you the ending you thought you wanted. Sometimes it gives you something better. A second chance, a clearer heart, a truer love, and above all, peace. As I stood one evening on the balcony of our small apartment, watching the sunset in hues of gold and fire, Claire's laughter drifting from the kitchen as she tried to bake cookies that were rapidly becoming charcoal, I realized something. I was grateful. Grateful for the pain because it led me here. Grateful for the betrayal because it taught me who I would never be again. Grateful for the break Emily had asked for because it broke the chains I never realized were binding me. She had smiled when she asked for a break.